live, but you never know when you're live because the computer just kind of does what the computer does, but it says you're live. This is my cold weather outfit. I've got my gym t-shirt on from CrossFit Nights. They no longer exist. One of the many casualties of coronavirus shutdowns. And I've got YouTube over here. So if you have questions, I'm going to write it now. Say questions in all caps. In all caps, because otherwise I won't see it, and then that would be a total bummer. So today we're going to record live as we like to do, and the topic is preparing for the big freeze. So without further ado, I'm going to turn off my metronome sound because there's nothing like recording a podcast and it's like boom, 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 boom the whole time. Morning, Lisa. Thanks for joining me today. If you feel like it, Lisa, let people know on MeWe that we're live. I just put it out on the Telegram under the hopes people would notice that. But, it's kind of a surprise live stream today. So I'm going to jump right in. Well, welcome everyone to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you want to live on your terms. Today is Monday, February 16th. February 15th, 2021. This is episode 397 of Living Free in Tennessee. We're becoming very close to episode 400. That'll be next Monday, assuming I record an episode on Monday. I'm not sure if I will because I'm driving to Florida to go help my buddy Xavier Hawk celebrate the launch of the Viron app. If you're interested in learning about that, I did an interview with him. I'll throw the links in the show notes. I can't remember the episode number, but it talked about how he's using technology to enable free transactions among people who want to work with each other. And we're recording this live on YouTube. So hi, John. Welcome to the YouTube feed. So I'll be on the road a lot. I've already recorded Friday's episode, so you'll get that. But Monday, unless I'm recording from the car, you're not getting an episode, or you'll get a replay episode if I have internet access. Anyway, today the big freeze is upon us in the holler in Tennessee. It is the frozen tundra of Tennessee. It's not so cold that my face hurts like Amy Dingman gets, but we're not used to this here. We'll just put it that way. So I'm going to share to you what is necessary to get ready for this kind of weather on a homestead in the South, because we do not build for this kind of weather, even though I swear it hits us every 3 to 5 years. So I just heard that Azle, Texas is like 5 degrees. And my buddy down in Dallas told me he hasn't had power since 2 a.m. So it sounds like they're tucking in for a bad one down there. So it's kind of on people's minds. So we should talk about that. Before I do that, though, I do want to remind you, if you want to send comments, feedback, questions in, you can do it Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact. The contact will, give you a form to fill out. That comes to me. And then if you're watching this live on YouTube and you have not subscribed and put the little bell button on the channel, do that. You'll get notices every time I go live to record or just go randomly live, which is going to happen more and more as soon as we get over that 1,000 follower line, and we're closing in on that number. So I'm super excited about that. Okay, now it's time for our usual segments of a Monday show. The first one is Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you eat, eating what you store, and this kind of weather is when you really are happy that you do this. So this week's pantry process is shining because I didn't have to go to the store to get bread and milk like all the other people around me needed to go to the store to get bread and milk, right? It's really nice to be able to just kind of sit it out, stay at home, and not be part of the problem, and not be on the roads when they're starting to get icy. And that's because, I may not have 100% of everything I want. Like some really nice Belgian chocolate would be really nice right now. I don't have that here. But, I have everything I need. And the reason I don't have Belgian chocolate here is if I had it, I'd eat it. So there is that. Sometimes your diet plan starts at the grocery store. So we also just opened the last little container of heavy whipping cream that I bought on December 26th. So with the advent of ultra pasteurization, milk lasts a really long time, right? And when I started going back to my monthly grocery shop this year, well, last year, but this last year for this year, I decided that I would get a bunch of heavy whipping cream because I knew we had the Freedom Cell event in January, and I grossly overestimated how much we needed. So here we are, February 15th, day after Valentine's Day. I'm finally through that and into the 4 cartons of milk I got for this month. So I've still overbought, but I am honing in on what it takes to keep my coffee creamy in the morning. And that's part of the learning process of eating what you store and storing what you eat, right? I have in the past been getting a gallon of goat's milk, but the goat's milk has dried up. So I'm doing heavy whipping cream right now and just going through a lot less than I thought. I'm also like, cheese. I guess I stopped eating a bunch of cheese, or I'm not cooking for people who eat cheese. I don't know, but I don't need cheese as much. So that's kind of cool on the grocery budget because a lot of what I need to buy, we buy whole animals here, or we raise animals and process them. We grow vegetables and can them. And so a lot of what I end up buying at the grocery store is specialty items. Like if I want a specific kind of German sausage, I'll get that, or spices and raw ingredients, or dairy, because I'm not really making enough cheese and I don't produce milk here to keep me in that sort of a cycle where I don't have to go to the store at all, which would be awesome if I could get it that far along. And I'm always kind of moving towards that goal. I may never reach it, but the closer I get to that, the happier I am because I don't like going to the grocery store. I am planning meals this week on what's here. So lots of hearty foods for the cold. I'm going to be throwing something in the crock pot right after I'm done recording this show. And the reason I'm doing a crock pot meal is it's really easy to take the crock out of my crock pot and put it on my soapstone wood stove and keep cooking. If the power goes out in a pinch, I could always pour it into a big old stock pot and turn my gas stove on. But, I'm heating the air and I can heat the air and my food at the same time if it comes to that. And then just having something hearty in the crock pot when it's weather like this where we have ice and snow is great. I'm hearing actually from the YouTube stream that 4 to 6 inches of snow have fallen east of San Antonio. And they are also glad that they have a stocked pantry. That's from Sue Laprise. So she just shared that with us. She said she's also glad she held off on gardening. The funny thing, Sue, is that when I was planning to put my peas out, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and I just got really busy and decided, well, whatever, I'll get them in a few weeks. And the perfect pea planting day appears to be Saturday when I'm out of town, of course. So I'm going to be planting my peas late, or I'm sneaking out on Thursday and putting them in right before the weather like plunges to 14 degrees, which for pea seeds, if they're underground, it'll be fine here. But, that's the way the weather's doing me this year. I go out of town and it's time to plant. Fat Tuesday is tomorrow. And we have a tradition here to make crepes. So we're making crepes, which will not be keto unless somebody brings keto crepe batter. And then, my thing this year is if you're coming to the crepe event, which will be the people in the neighborhood and probably nobody else because it's kind of icy out there, bring whatever you like to put in crepes. And I really like to have wild mushrooms, which I'm not going to get this year unless I rehydrate ones I've dried, and chicken, which I have ready to go. And I make a gravy for it. I like really savory crepes. They are so, so good. So that's the plan this week. And that's all coming out of the prepper pantry. And then I have a big old pile of elephant garlic. We've decided to smother out an area of the garden that had little stands of elephant garlic everywhere. So Tactical dug that up, put it in my kitchen, and it's been sitting there for 2 weeks. And when you harvest garlic kind of out of the season of when garlic should be harvested, it doesn't get that nice protective outer coating because it hasn't really made that layer yet. So I need to scrub all the rest of the dirt off that. And then I think what I'm going to do is grind it and put it in my dehydrator and jar it up with a moisture eater, and then just fine grind that for garlic powder throughout the year. It's like homemade garlic powder is the best. It's so different than what you get at the store. I can't even explain why. It's just more garlic flavor is what it is. Next segment is Operation Independence. This is where we talk about building local slash sustainable sources of revenue in our lives and reducing the need to spend the money so that we have more of the money we get to keep, right? And so that we don't have to earn 30% more, because you have to earn it and then pay 30% in taxes, and then you get the money and then you use that to pay for something else. We want to turn that on its head when we can, but we don't want to waste time doing it. So this year I got my 2020 business tax all done as of last night, which I know, like, some people who know me are sick of hearing me saying the progress I make, but I needed to do that for me, because what I do with projects that involve coding expenses, which is the worst task I can think of to make myself have to do, right? It's abhorrent to me. I'd rather snake out the gray water system. Just saying. It's a crapshoot about if I'd rather snake out the septic system versus doing coding in a spreadsheet. So for the first time in over 20 years of hating coding, I have my coding done by February 14th. And that means everything can go off to the accountant. The business taxes can be filed, which then folds into my personal taxes, which means everything's going to be done for the year. And I feel great about it. I did not feel great doing it, which is why I needed to report my progress to get some encouragement along the way, because that's how much I hate doing it. Now, this year, I may be outsourcing coding, but last year I made myself do it for two reasons. One, you can outsource coding and still not give the people who you outsource it to enough information to get it done. And that's bad, because you have to basically put your effort into um, making sure the codes are as right as they're going to be. And two, I needed to see how my new S corporation was going to float out, as far as what do I need to track for making financial decisions? What do I need to track along, like, how can I simplify the coding process to make this as automated as possible, right? Because if I can just fill them into a software program and it mostly knows, if it comes from DTC, it's the internet, boom, done. I don't have to code that. As much of that as I can do now as the foundation of the business, the better off I'm going to be than paying somebody to code DTC every single month. So that all went really well. And then I am putting in place a celebration concept. So I'm looking for a reward that's not food or alcohol, that will make me want to do my monthly coding, because even when you outsource the coding, you need to look at it, right? And have that all ready to go once a month within the first week of the month after the month that's finished, so that I can keep this momentum going forward. So looking for ideas for that. One idea I had is just, well, I kind of got it from a friend, is take a day off, like take the Thursday after the first of the month off and do my coding. And then when my coding's done, I can go do whatever I want, right? Like, not, it's kind of like a selfish Sunday thing. I can go swim laps. I can go kayaking. I can just write the book I haven't been writing on, whatever I want to do. Rest of the day is mine. And I kind of like that idea. I'll see how that plays out with the need to roast coffee. Okay, because we are streaming this on YouTube, I did hear somebody ask me for a recipe of my crepes, Karen. And here's the deal. I have a binder clip on my finger. I don't use a recipe exactly, but I'll tell you this. I start with 4 to 6 eggs and about maybe a cup of milk. And I'll be using heavy whipping cream this time, so I'll dilute it half milk, half water, which I'm sure is breaking some rule of crepes somewhere. But anyway, do that. I add about a teaspoon of salt, and I add a little bit of olive oil, like, just kind of pour the bottle real quick. Might be a teaspoon, might be 2 teaspoons. And then I mix that all together as best I can. Like, so I beat the eggs first, and then I pour the milk in and the salt and the olive oil, and I get that nice and liquidy. And then I add flour until it's crepe batter. So like, if you add too much flour, then your crepe ends up weird and too dense, and you'll know it. If you don't add enough, then it takes forever to cook, and you'll figure out you need to add some more flour. If either of those two situations happen, it's really easy to add more water or milk to make it less dense or more flour to make it more dense. What I want to have happen when I scoop a scoop of the crepe batter onto the hot pan is that I can easily make it very thin just by rotating my cast iron skillet's what I use with some melted butter on it or melted lard. And I want it real thin so that I can pour the batter on, make it real thin pretty quickly so we get a uniform cooking. And then I sprinkle the internal contents in. So I will have, if I have chicken and cheese and spinach and sauteed mushrooms, I will have them pre-sauteed, put that all in on one half of the crepe right after I've gotten the batter out, like fully out to the edges of the pan. And then I wait until it's time to be able to, and basically the way I know that is on the half that doesn't have stuff on it, when it's starting to get bubbles that don't fill in with liquid when they pop or when you pop them, then I fold it gently in half and let it go for a little bit while longer, and that's heating the contents. And then I flip it on its other side, and that heats the other side. And then I pour that on a plate. If I'm serving that with gravy, then I put the gravy on afterwards. Okay. So that's basically how I'll make a crepe. And it's the same process for a sweet crepe. You can put some sort of, berry compote in there or whatever while it's cooking. You fold it, you put it on your plate, and you put powdered sugar or whatever, or maple syrup over the top of it. That's how I do crepes. Okay. With that, it's time for the main content of today's show, main topic, and that is preparing for a big freeze in the South. And strangely enough, people further south than I am are having a much worse time right now. It's colder. They have more ice. Sucks to be them because they are not built for this, and we are not built for this. And the reason I thought we should talk about this today is sometimes things happen on a regular basis that you're not built for. So the people getting slammed in Texas, last time I heard about y'all being slammed in Texas has to have been within the last 10 years, because I had the same friends there that I have now that I've only had for about 10 years. So they say this happens, once every 20 plus years or once every 50 years. And then I started looking at that data and I'm like, no, this happens here every 3 to 5 years, that I can see that I've documented, oh, we had a snowstorm that was more than just a couple of, a light dusting, right? And I don't know what that statistic is like in Texas, but I do know I was hearing from a friend in Portland, Oregon, who they have like the same sort of issue going on there. And they were saying this doesn't happen very often. I'm like, yeah, but I can think of several times when I lived there that it happened. And I can think of when I had an employee where it was just like wave after wave after wave of snow. I think it was around 2017 or maybe 16 or maybe 18. I can't remember. So it does happen. And I think human nature is that we remember the good times. And so unfortunately in the South, what that means is we plan for the averages in how we build stuff. And the averages do not include plunging down to 0 degrees or below 0 degrees, because it hardly ever does that. And when it does, it's for like a day or two. And then you're back up. And then when you look at the weather statistics, sort of averaged over time, it's as if it never gets to 0 here. So we don't build for that. What we build for is getting down to maybe 10 degrees. And we get down to 10 degrees on the regular. I would say every other year or every 3 years here, we get down that cold. And that's as if they're planning for things outside the scope. Well, then I look at data and I see that in 1996, it was negative 20 degrees here. I've never been through, since living here 14 years, never been through a negative 20 degree day, but I have been through a negative 5 degree and negative 8 degree night since I've been here. And I know what happens. What happens to my house when that happens, it is not built for that. Things that I don't want to freeze. I'm cold. Parts of the house that used to get heated don't get heated, right? So just, I thought, well, this is a germane topic to talk about, especially for those of you thinking, do I want to live in the country? Do I want to be on a homestead? Let me tell you something about living in the country. If the power goes out here, there's a chance it'll come back on soon. But there's a chance that because there are only 8 families on the entire 3-mile stretch of road I live on, that they'll be like, you know what? We got all these people in the city without power. We're going to get them hooked up first. And rightly so, right? Because a lot of people in the city are not built to even do backup systems. The cool thing about living in the country is that I've got backup systems. I've thought about this before because I know that if the power goes out, it may or may not come back on. I was shocked last March when after the tornadoes came through, we were back up sooner than a week. And there were other places in the state that weren't. And I think it's because the damage here wasn't as bad as there. So it was sort of like a no-brainer. Well, we can connect these two wires and we're good. Over there, we got to put in poles and get everything out of the way and blah blah blah, right? So it's a different scale. That's the only reason I can think of. Well, out here, if the ice hits the way they say the ice is going to hit, it's very likely we're going to have poles down and wires down. And last time this happened, there was a state of emergency. National Guard came in, not here, but I think in Crossville area. They evacuated people out of their houses. Like, it was a big old deal because we're not built for this. So my base, and actually, I'm hearing about rolling power outages in Texas right now, just because they don't have enough power to even deal with it being that cold. And somebody told me, is it true? Is it 5? I don't know. Anyway, the base philosophy for planning for this, though, and this applies if you are built for this or not, if you even have a risk of this or not. Like, I don't imagine that Tucson, Arizona gets a lot of ice storms. They probably don't, but you have other issues, right? So I like to plan for what is likely. And what is likely here, having lived here for 14 years now, is that every 3 to 5 years we get a snow that's significant or ice that is significant. Okay. So plan for what is likely. Like, look at your area. Is it a dust storm? Is it flooding? Is it tornadoes? Is it hurricanes? Is it windstorms? Is it like way too much rain all at one time? Is it not enough rain? Is it drought? I don't know. Your area is going to be different for that, but plan for what's likely. And then think about, what do I need to get through this if I can't get a lot of outside help? What's likely to go down that I'm dependent on that might be grid related, whether that be power, water, internet, like any of that. Garbage service stops. I don't know what your thing will be, but there's a thing that will be impacted. Can't drive on the roads. Don't know. Need to deal with breathing if it's a dust storm, right? Need to protect animals if it's a dust storm. That would be important. And then think about, how can I avoid the pain of that? So keep your solution simple and elegant, though. You don't need to build a bunker for a dust storm necessarily. If you can just figure out, well, this is how we stay inside. This is how we keep the inside of our house, like the air quality, relatively decent. This is what happens once the dust storm passes for us to dig back out, whatever it is, right? And for ice, what we're looking at is likely that power goes out because branches fall, and we're really good at growing trees in Tennessee. And then the power lines are up in the air, not underground, so they break the power lines, and then there we go. If you're dependent on power for your heat, you have no heat until the power company gets out there with their big old truck, which may or may not be real well prepared to be on the icy roads, which are not cleared, to go fix that issue. And I do know the power guys, the poor guys, are going to be out working their butts off in this ice for the next few days, because every time power goes off, they got to leave the house and go deal with this, whether or not the roads are passable, right? And again, that means also, if you live on a really steep hill, you might not be first on the list to be dealt with, because it's hard to get their truck up there. And at some point, it doesn't do them any good to have their trucks rolling down the side of a hill. So keep your solutions simple and elegant to solve for what's likely to need to be covered. And then once you've done, like, make a list and then think, okay, this is the thing I need to do. What else can it do for me? Right? So an example of that is power goes out here in tornadoes, power goes out here in ice. I've got two kinds of things that cause power to go out. And some ways to deal with power going out is, for example, to have a generator. Is it worth buying a generator? That depends on where you are, how often it happens, and how expensive the generator is. But for me, having a generator has a couple of purposes. One, my water depends on power, so I can have water in a power outage situation. Two, I can still roast coffee with that generator. Three, when I'm working on projects that are not near power, which I do because of my lifestyle, I can run power tools off the generator. So I'm trying to think, okay, there are 3 things I can do with that generator. I mean, 4, I can lend it to a friend who has a power outage, but there are 3 things I can do with that generator. So that's probably worth doing. Before I had the generator, I used an inverter and my car became my generator. So there are lots of ways to just think about getting things done without wasting a bunch of money on crap you never use, right? So that's the base philosophy. So as we went into this particular freeze, the cool thing is usually I'm doing this by myself, but now I have the holler neighbors around me. So we got 4 households total thinking about ice is coming. What do we need to do? Right. So we were able to divide it up into categories, have some brainstorming on this. And I find, I can come up with great solutions by myself, but when you have multiple minds on this, you're ready to go. And I think so we divided it into areas of focus like home, the inside things that need to happen, livestock and animals, keeping outbuildings and well houses going, because in the country, like the unique thing we have going on in the country is no city water. We had a holler family meeting to divide and conquer. And then we talked a little bit about, well, how do we have fun and entertainment? Because a lot of how we entertain ourselves involves the internet, which needs power, or streaming movies, which needs power. So if you don't have power, how do you have fun? So those were the areas we have thought about in the last, I mean, we've been getting ready for this for 2 weeks, guys. So it was kind of crunch time this weekend as the ice was coming our direction to deploy. But we were so ready for this. It's not even funny. So it's all in the mindset though, right? You can come at preparing for freezing cold from a place of fear. Oh my gosh, am I going to die? Is Granny going to get or you can be like, okay, what can I do to get ready for this? What am I willing to accept? And, having been through a few of these, like I'm not dependent on power for heat. I'm dependent on firewood. This year I'm running out of firewood. I'm going to be out of firewood in about a week and a half. And that's not making me very happy, but it did teach me something about what I'm doing differently for firewood next year. But I have 3 backup ways to heat my house, none of which, well, one of which involves electricity and the other 2 do not, right? So it's all in the mindset. I didn't come at that from fear. That did not get deployed all at one time. It's just over time, as I've seen opportunities to fill in a backup plan, I've been like, oh, those kerosene heaters are $10 at a garage sale. Kerosene heaters are pretty easy to repair if anything's wrong with them. Those look like they're in pretty good shape. I'll risk $20 to have a couple kerosene heaters, and I keep kerosene around. Kerosene stores for a really long time without doing much with it. Okay, backup system 1. 2, I need to heat my roasting shack. I don't have a good way to heat my roasting shack, and I can't really afford to do it with electricity because it uses so much electricity that I don't have enough amperage to do that. So how about a big buddy propane heater? Okay, well, now I have the roasting shack heater also available. So you see how that works? It's all in the mindset. So here are some inside oddities that may not happen in the city. Some of them may do that, but we went into the ice storm, and the first thing I did was make sure 100% of my dishes were done by the end of the day yesterday. Now, I am the person who I do my dishes in sets, and sometimes that means there's dishes in the sink, and sometimes it means the sink is clean. And in particular, in the evening, if I've served dinner way too late, I have a tendency not to do the dishes in the sink until the next morning when I have my morning tidying the kitchen time on the schedule. So that's not going to go well in a power down situation. You want to know why? I need power for water. I don't need power for hot water. Well, I kind of do need power for hot water now with the new hot water heater. But anyway, I don't I need power for water, which means if the grid is down, it is possible for me to get water with the generator to my house, but it's a pain in the butt. And that means dishes will sit in the sink longer. Do you know what happens to dishes when they sit in the sink too long? They start to smell bad. So the best thing I can do for my own peace of mind, if I know I might be out of electricity, is get my dishes done so that if the power goes down, I'm not like, oh, and now those eggs stink. Put the dishes outside in a tub, right? And then what we do here is I start using paper dishes, right? So paper plates. I do still use utensils because it's real easy to wipe those off afterwards. But we go straight into this, well, let's try not to make dishes thing. And that may seem wasteful to people, but to me, it makes all the difference. There's no smelly stuff around. I don't like rotting food. It's not a biohazard in my kitchen, right? All of that's really important. Two, I have a full bathtub right now. I filled my bathtub after my bath last night. I filled it with cold water. Why did I do that? Again, it's back to the if the power goes out, then I have no water. A full bathtub, this may sound gross, but a full bathtub gives me two things. One, a way to flush the toilet. Two, I can refill from the bathtub through my water filter, and I have water to drink out of the Berkey. I also have stored water though, so I probably don't need to do that, but it fulfills two purposes, right? There's a backup water storage device that has many gallons of water, and it's important to flush the toilet. Now, speaking of the toilet, sanitation is really important in the country if you have that kind of a thing where your water may go out. And really, if you think about ice storms in the city, your water can freeze in the city too. So having the bathtub is great. You know what else is great? An outhouse. So I don't even have to flush the toilet if I don't use the toilet. But if it's cold outside, I'm going to want to use the toilet at night at least. But we have composting outhouses here for events. And the best thing about the composting outhouses is that every time something goes wrong with the septic system or the water's out, I can just go to the composting outhouse. It may not be my first choice for comfort because, you know, you have to bury your rear end and it's cold outside and there's not heat in the outhouses. But it's nice to just have everything out there and no smell in here and no weird flushing problems, right? So it's another way to just kind of in the country, you have different things. It's one of my oddities. I have outhouses. I keep a pitcher of water in my sink full of water at all times when there's an ice storm because I use it to water the indoor animals and to refill my Berkey for water. And so the rule here at this point is if you use the pitcher to top the dog water or to top the Berkey, you top it off again and leave it sitting in the sink in case a cat knocks it over so it doesn't make a big mess. And that's always there. So it's all back to water. You can see that a lot of my planning right now is about water. Rooms that do not need heat do not need to be open. So I heat with wood and it's going to plunge down to 12 degrees tonight. And that means the room I'm sitting in right now, which is my office, which nobody sleeps in at night, does not need to be heated. The aforementioned firewood issue is upon me. I will use less firewood if I'm not heating this room, right? So what I can do is close this room off. Now, the room I don't want to close off is my bathroom, which is right next to this room, because it has pipes and I don't want the pipes to freeze. So I want to kind of keep that room warm. If we were going to plunge to negative 20 degrees, I would drain all the water out of the house. I would close off my bedroom. I'd close off this room, and I have a door to the back of the house, and I would reduce the number of square feet that need to be heated in about half. And then I would sleep out in my living room on a camping pad or on the sofa and just keep the fire going there. So there are ways to do that. So you can close off rooms if you don't have doors or sections of your house, hang sheets. It totally works. I have a friend who used to be in Portland who heated with wood, and he would have in the winter this complex section of sheets where he could get heat into one part of the house or the other, right? So rooms that don't need heat, you don't need to heat. Another fun thing is that we have staged little battery powered lanterns all over the holler. So I have my rechargeable Ozark little lantern. If the power goes out, I have light. I also have oil lamps and flashlights, but it's really nice to just be able to turn it on and be able to see, and then you have a light in your room at night if you need it. It's both psychologically nice when the power goes out to be able to have light, and it's really good to see so you don't fall on your face. Because I took a really bad spill earlier this year. I'm all about not falling on my face because it hurts. The other weird thing I do, I have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, an Xterra, and it's a very steep hill up to my driveway, and it's icy right now. Totally, I should go out and drive, right? No. But what if I have a medical emergency or an animal medical emergency and need to leave? So what I've done is I have faced my vehicle so it's pointed downhill. It's already in 4-wheel drive. If I need to go sliding down the hill, I can. If I was really worried about it getting bad here, I would have put it at the bottom of the hill to my driveway so I could walk down to the vehicle and go. Like right now, I'm not that worried about an emergency, but if I had something going on like a chest cold, I would have put one of my vehicles at the bottom of the hill. And now I have two vehicles, so I can have one up here and one down there. And then the last thing, and this is true if you're having windstorms in California, if you're having forest fires, if you're having ice storms, if you're having tornadoes, the more things you have that are charged all the way, the more comfortable you're going to be if you like your technology devices because they're up and running. If the power goes down almost all the time, I can get the internet on my cell phone. I can get messages out. I can get information I want. And I have these battery backups that I will confess, sometimes I'm not so good about putting it back on the charger. I've been really good about putting it back on the charger in the last few days because I know if the power goes out and everything's charged, I'm happy. Right now, my phone is not in my office. It's out on its charger while I record this because I do not need to look at it. I do not need to answer it. And I might as well have a fully charged phone. So those are kind of the oddities that we have inside the house. What I haven't covered is heat or backup plans for boiling water, though. I have a camp stove. I can boil water. I can cook food. I don't need that. You know why? Because I have a propane stove in my kitchen that I can light without power. The oven will not work in a power outage situation, but because it needs power to regulate, I guess, the temperature or something. But I can always use the burners on that thing. I have a wood stove going that I can cook on, right? I have all of those things in place that I need. But if you're in the city and don't have a wood stove, a camping stove is your best friend. You know, I had a friend who was on Facebook the other day upset because she couldn't get coffee. And I said, well, do you have a camp stove? Because if you have a camp stove and a way to just like, even if you don't have a coffee cone, you can put the ground straight in the water, pour it through some sort of a mesh screen, and you have coffee. Or you can deal with you can like, because the grounds will float on the coffee, you can scoop the most of them off with a spoon that you can, or pour it with the spoon holding the grounds back and get coffee if you really want coffee. And I think when you're in a power down situation, it's the little comforts like coffee and tea that are really important. In fact, I tend to drink way too much coffee on days like this. So I've already staged my teapot because I don't want to deal with that situation. Okay, animals. I have livestock. And livestock can't come in to be warm. If I bring the livestock in right now, they're used to it being cold. They're going to be really uncomfortable in here. Also, I'm going to have pig poop on my living room floor and potentially the dogs fighting with the pigs. The pig's 500 pounds. Don't want him in here. I don't even know how I get him in the door, right? Anyway, so what you want to do with your livestock is make sure that they have warm, dry bedding, that they have shelter, that they're not getting a lot of wind. And we have a pig barn with 2 of the 3 sides up. So what Tactical did yesterday is he made like a straw side to the pig barn on the one side because there's a fence halfway through it. And then he filled it up so that the pigs can pretty much burrow all the way into the straw and be totally covered, which will be important tonight when it's 12 degrees. We also topped off the straw for the goats. Their barn is a little cozier than the pig barn right now. And then my dogs were going stir crazy because they didn't want to go outside. So I made them go on a walk. You know what I mean? And then I'm going to stop the recording. YouTube people, this is where you see what goes wrong when I'm recording a podcast. Google, the MRFers, just signed me out and I can't see my show notes. So I don't know what my next bullet item is because, I mean, I can keep going, but I'm going to be making it up. But that's like whenever you hear me on the podcast do and then you hear me cut back in, that's what's going on. But for no reason in the world, I have to re-enter my damn password. Yeah, Google, screw you. I was recording a show. My password because I had caps lock on. Last time something like this happened, y'all watched me fight with my jacket, but it's too cold to take it off. And now it's not taking my password. Okay, that time it took my password. I can't type under duress, apparently. So 1985. -18 in 1949. Ooh. And Eli's hauling people out of the snow. Okay. That was annoying. What was I even saying? I'm now totally I'm talking about livestock. And see, now I gotta go back and hear what I said. What did I say? Um, I'm gonna stop the recording. I said I'm gonna stop the recording. That doesn't help me at all. Maybe we don't need that on the podcast. What do you think? I'll edit that out. We'll just cut that right there. Wait. Oh. So the key to efficient podcast recording, guys, is edit as you go. Because if you don't edit as you go, you're going to be sad. So then I do this. I split regions at the playhead. I delete it. And then I have a big old shining You know, the funny thing about podcasting is you go back and you listen to yourself and you're like, wow, I say a lot. By the way, that sound I just made is called vocal fry, and that's something women do to increase their credibility. And it's very annoying to listen to. They talk like this lower so they're more credible. Don't ever do that. If you hear yourself doing that, learn to support and talk a little bit higher in your vocal register, because that's not getting you any credibility at all. But culturally, in the US culture, for some reason, we like to we've somehow taught our ladies to do that, and it's really not a pretty sound. Germans do that so much better. They don't do the vocal fry thing so much. Okay, so what was I saying? And then I'm probably talking about pigs or something. 12 degrees. We also topped off the straw for the goats. Barn is a little cozier than barn cozy. Right. And then my dogs were going stir crazy because they don't want to go outside, so I made them go on a walk. Yeah, dogs went on a walk. And then okay. I made my dogs go on a walk. That's a pretty good place to, don't you guys think? Like, you don't need to hear the words and then they, because I was already starting to see that Google was messing with me. Oh, sigh. Usually when I'm doing this by myself and not watched, it happens quickly. Hope you're enjoying the YouTube live stream. So dogs, walk. What else did I want to say? Oh, yeah. And then it's as if cats are psychic and they are suddenly getting along. I have two cats that fight with each other all the time. They're all snuggled up on the couch when I get back from the walk yesterday. But that dog walk was really important because it was before the ice came. I got all the wiggles out. And before that, they were just ridiculous in my house. And so now I can have the dogs in the house. Today, it looks like we're going to heat up above 32 degrees. And so if the roads look like I'm not going to kill myself, I'm taking those little guys on another walk. Now here's an interesting thing about my ducks. So every time we get real cold, like it's about to be in Tennessee, I hear stories of people's ducks getting frozen in their ponds and dying. And, you know, when you have ducks, you don't want that to happen to them. And so then I looked up the validity of that, and it can happen. However, my ducks, when it's really cold, will go to my pond and they will stay in the pond and they don't freeze in the pond. And the reason they don't freeze in the pond is 55-degree water is coming out of a spring. It's a spring-fed pond at all times. And so what's going to happen after tonight? So tonight they'll go back in their coop because ducks don't know it's going to be 12 degrees tonight. They're going to be in their coop and it's warm in there. There's a light that can be turned on. It keeps it warmer and there's plenty of dry bedding in there. And they're going to come out of that and they're going to be like, man, it was cold last night and it's warmer in the pond. And then they're going to run down to the pond and they're going to get in there and go, my feet are warm. And then tomorrow night, they're going to be like, screw you, lady. We're staying in the pond. And that means I'm not going to get my 10 eggs. So that's just the price I pay. But the other thing we do with livestock here is give them extra food because they're burning more calories to stay warm. So we want to give them an extra ration of food every day and keep an eye on them to make sure they're staying warm. Keep an eye on their bedding. One year, my goat water, which is in the bathtub up in the goat pasture, froze over completely, and I couldn't figure out why the goats were getting out. And finally, I realized the bathtub was right by the fence, and they could get up on the water and jump over. This year, that's not happening. So this year, for the first time ever, I don't have to be on a 2-hour cycle filling up water with the pitcher from my house, like warm water. and then dumping the ice out of the water dish 2 hours later and refilling it. I've done that for years with the goats, and the ducks can just go down to the pond and drink. I mean, you gotta think about how do your animals get water. Um, and then I have like a dog food dish heater, and I put a duck water pan on that, or a chicken water, depending on what I need to water. But you can't do that with goats because they'll just knock it off, right? So the goats have always been a problem, and they end up with these round discs of ice all up in their pasture. Well, this year I told Tactical, hey, you want to like trade off with me? So it's every 4 hours, one of us goes out for the water, and he walks by with this like stock tank heater in his hand and an extension cord. I'm like, where'd you get that? He's like, oh, I had an extra one for an aquaponics project I was working on. So we have a stock tank heater in the goat pasture, which is great because it means I haven't had to worry about goat water. So keeping, stock tank heaters, buying them right now, hard to do. Buying them in the summer, not hard to do. So if you're going through a freeze right now, you're like, man, I wish I had a stock tank water heater. Put it on your reminder in July, order it in July, and you'll be all set for this. So super stoked about that. If the power goes out though, I've got my pitcher, and I've got buckets, and I can just put water in those and change it out every so often. The goats can drink out of a 5-gallon bucket, and they usually don't knock it over. So the cool thing about that is if you don't have easy access to warm water, is you just change the buckets out, right? You bring the frozen one in, put it by the stove, and bring the unfrozen one and put it out there. So you can see I've had a lot of time to think about what to do if it freezes. So that's the livestock. They're usually the easiest to take care of. We did move a lot of hay around yesterday, both for food for the goats and for bedding for everybody. And then the next area we think of is the well house and outbuildings. Now, right now, all of my outbuildings that are going to be cold can be cold. It doesn't matter. Okay. But the well house and the prepper pantry is attached to my house. Both, well, if it's going to be negative 60 degrees, as I said, different, or negative 20, it would be different approach, but I'm going to keep them above freezing. One of the cool things that happened at the LFTN 2019 event, or was it 18? Yeah, 2019, is we built a rocket mass heater in the pump house. So starting today at about noon, we're going to light a fire down there to get all that mass heated up so it radiates through the night. And then we'll see if we make it through a 12-degree night without the well house freezing up. The place that usually freezes is the resupply from the spring to my holding tank. And I will be dripping water tonight to keep my own water in my house going because the pipes go through my attic and the attic gets cold. And then I open the hatch to the attic and I put a little heater under there so that it can be warm. I'm actually using power heat tonight for the first time since I turned on the one heater the one time in October or whatever when it got cold in the house. So that's going to happen. And it's a good test. The rocket mass heater needs some repair, but we'll be totally demoing the rocket mass heater at the spring workshop this year so you can see how that works. But it's really cool because it has a hot fire. It gets nice and warm in there. And then we stuff the cracks with some insulative material because there's a big old crack under the door. And it heats up it holds the heat in, and then it's a big giant slab. So it's a really great way to keep that area heated without running electricity. That's not something you'd always think of, I don't think, except for that I had so many times that the power breakers would break in the middle of the night, and then I'd be at 2 a.m. and it's 0 degrees outside, running down there to hit the breaker again to keep the pipes from freezing. That rocket mass heater has been awesome this year. And then the prepper pantry, I just have one of those oil circulated radiator heaters that I can turn on. That'll go on at about 6 o'clock tonight. I have an alarm set. And the cool thing about the prepper pantry is I have a deep freeze in there, and that puts heat out in the room too. What I don't want to do in the prepper pantry is heat it too far above about 35 degrees because you know what else is going in there today? I have 6 blueberry bushes. They are not used to being in heat. They are not in the ground because I didn't want them in the ground for this ice storm. So they're going in there for a few days to not get frozen solid in their pots, but also not to get too warm or out of the scope of what a blueberry bush would be getting this time of year, so that after the storm, I can then plant them where they're going to go. And hopefully I haven't killed the blueberry bushes. So that's all we had to do for well houses and outbuildings. Nighthawk next door, though, has already drained his water and shut down his well house so that he doesn't have to worry about keeping it above freezing, because his system is, the well house will be fine, but the pipes under his house freeze really easily. And rather than spend a ton of electricity keeping those from freezing, he just tends to drain them and then come down here if he needs. I told him if he needs a shower, just come down and take a shower here. And that's brings me to the thing. We have 4 families. We have 4 houses. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. And in advance of this, we had a family meeting, a Holler family meeting, and thought, okay, what do we need to cover for? And here's what we figured out. We have all these heaters because I'm like a heater collector. I have been collecting heaters for 14 years since I moved here. And the reason is I don't like pipes freezing and I don't like being cold, right? So we looked at what we had and we're like, okay, well, we have 2 kerosene heaters we know we work. We have 2 kerosene heaters that Nicole bought that she doesn't know work. So we're going to put one of each kind of heater in 2 places that are weak spots for example, Jenny's house. If the power goes out, she doesn't have backup wood heat this year. So she needs heaters down there if the power goes out. And my pump house is the other one. If the rocket mass heater fails, we're screwed. Okay. We also have 2 propane heaters. So a propane heater went down to Jenny's, same reason. And another one went to Nighthawk's because, well, it was already there. And then I have like this propensity of keeping old tanks of propane full all the time. So we have like, I don't know, 10, 25 gallon, maybe not 10, more like 8, 25 or 20 pound propane tanks here that I just keep here and I keep them full because propane stores forever, right? And so we got those staged, 2 in each place where there's a propane heater. We got lanterns out. Everybody like Tactical and Nighthawk have tons of lanterns. I have 1 lantern. So we went into their extra lanterns, moved those around the holler. Then we looked at our generators. We have Nighthawk has a big generator and I have a smaller generator. My generator will run my water or my fridges and freezers. It will not run both. His will run both. And then we looked again. Okay, if the power goes out, where do we need the generator and what for? We need it at Jenny's house to get the fridge going because we have a solution over at Nighthawk's to keep his fridge going if he needs to. And if we put his here, we can run my fridge, Tactical's fridge, all the freezers and the water, and we have a functional system here. So they brought that out of the workshop up the steep hill and stage. I now have a generator in front of my house so that in the ice, we don't have to move this heavy thing around, right? And then we have all the extension cables. The one thing that happens if the power goes out that's not fun is the electric fences stop working and I'm going to have goats running around. But we're ready for that too. So having that plan and having that meeting before the ice hit meant that we spent maybe 3 hours one day, everybody dividing and conquering and doing everything else. And the other thing is if ice brings the power out, I'm not that worried about my freezers. You know why? Yeah, you know why? Because frozen freezers, no power, no problem. It's only a problem if the power's out when it gets warm again. And I can take the stuff out of my fridge and throw it in my giant event cooler outside and it will stay fine. I don't have that much in my fridge. So that was really nice. The other thing is in a really bad pinch, my house is command center. I can sleep Jenny's 2 boys and Jenny comfortably. Everybody can have their own bed and we can be warm and cozy here. And then the 2 fellas can go down to Tactical's house and they have a wood stove there. So we have ways to consolidate, which is very helpful. And that's why I think having people you can depend on around you is really helpful in any emergency situation because you can say, okay, this is how we get through the next 2 weeks together. And then we can go back to what we were going to do. So from there, it's only been thinking about entertainment. I'm on keto, but I'm going to have hot chocolate. So I've got hot cocoa. I've got tea staged and ready to go just for personal comfort. And then I have board games. I've chosen a few books I want to read that are not electronic. One of my fun activities is to finish my taxes. I have enough batteries to do that, right? So I can work on that. And we have movies queued up that are downloaded and not streamable. So to the extent that we have electricity, we can do that. So entertainment's basically covered here. And part of that is it's not that hard to entertain me. I don't get bored. If I have a pen and paper, I can just whatever, or I like going on walks in the ice. But we did put some thought to entertainment, particularly board games for Jenny's sons, because they're less used to kind of the simpler entertainments, although they do enjoy them when we do them. And some board games for the boys, I think will go a long way, or card games and that sort of thing will go a long way if we end up in a situation where we're not able to recharge devices and that sort of thing. So that's what it looks like preparing for an ice storm here. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it all happened really quickly because most of that stuff here is already in place. And you guys, weather happens. It just happens. No matter how hard we try to keep weather from happening, it's the easiest thing to plan for, and it can result in additional stability in your life. Like as you heard, I went through more wood this year than I thought I would, and I have 2 other ways to heat my house because I planned for weather and I have those systems ready to go. The benefit of being ready for weather, if you do it right, is that you're prepared for a lot of other things. I am never happier as when I see that the stores are overwhelmed with people getting ready for the ice storm and I'm at home and I've got all the groceries I need. I am one less person at the store causing the problem, and I don't have to be out in the crowds, and I don't have to be fighting the initial ice traffic, because the other thing that happens even before the weather hits, people start driving like loons around here. And, it doesn't matter how much experience you have driving in the ice and snow. If the other people driving around you are driving like loons, your increased chance of getting hit is there. And that is totally the case here. So if you're not getting set for a winter event and you're like, why is Nicole even talking about this? Ask yourself, what is likely to happen in my area? Is it a dust storm? Is it a tornado? Is it a wildfire? Is it a windstorm? Is it flooding? Is it extreme heat, which causes rolling blackouts, right? Or brownouts or whatever they call those. All of those things happen from time to time in different parts of the country. And you should know what they are if you've been anywhere for any length of time because you've been through one, right? So what is the thing that might happen? And then ask, what should I have on hand to be ready? Is it a battery backup? Is it enough food to get through a couple of weeks? Like, what is that? How can I get these things in a useful way that I can use, right? So if you're storing food you eat and using the food that you store, then you're ready for things, a situation where access to resupply is cut off. And that's kind of cool because no matter what, you're still using it. You're not really spending more money in the big picture. You're not storing specialty foods that are only for if there's a flood or something. And it gives you that stability to not have to go fight the crowds at the store when it comes time for people to all pile on. I think approaching your household planning in this way not only gives you security through the weather events, but it also gives you a foundation from which you can weather storms of life. And that's why we talk about this. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. One, get your coffee at Holler Roast. I wish I had a coffee right now. That's hollerroast.com, or go over to Living Free in Tennessee, click on membership, and think about becoming a member. With that, guys, go out, make it a great day. I just said make it a great day. Xavier, that's your fault. It's supposed to be make it a great week. I've been saying make it a great week for like 5 years now. And today I said it wrong. Am I going to change that in the podcast? Nah. You guys got to know I make mistakes sometimes. You hear me go blah, 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 blah. Anyway, YouTube guys, thanks for joining today. I hope you're staying warm and cozy and that